This is Pastoring in the Digital Parish, your resource and point of connection for building your digital ministry toolkit and bringing your congregation into the digital age. My name is Ryan Dunn, and in this episode, we sit down with Sherry Hietpas, who, on one level, is the associate pastor of digital ministry at Andrew Chapel United Methodist Church in Vienna, Virginia. She is also the founder of Encounter, an all-digital expression of church. And she does all this while living with her family in Thailand. In this session, we're going to talk with Sherry about the challenges and successes of cultivating a digital congregation, the impact of traditional liturgical expressions online, the use of AI-generated tools for social media engagement, and the evolution of pastoral care in a digital context. Really, it's all the stuff that you're doing, all the stuff that you're interested in. Well, at least, when it comes to digital ministry, that is. If this kind of content from Pastoring in the Digital Parish is helpful for you or valuable, then let it be known to the whole world. How you can do that is simply by leaving a rating or review on your podcast listening platform of choice. That'd be super helpful. It helps new people find the podcast. It helps us connect with other digital ministry practitioners who could provide some really valuable insight as guests on this podcast. So do that, and thanks so much. Our guest / adjunct professor for this session, again, is Reverend Sherry Hietpas. Besides being associate pastor at Andrew Chapel and running Encounter, Sherry has a passion for building community as an expression of faith in Jesus Christ and believes many relationships are formed around a table, usually over good food and discussion. Sherry believes that connections made online can help build connections and springboard into deeper spiritual connections in one's personal life as well. Kind of sounds familiar. I'll bet you're there too. So let's get talking about how it started, how it's going on Pastoring in the Digital Parish. Sherry Hietpas, thank you so much for joining us on Pastoring in the Digital Parish. How goes it with your soul this morning?
It is good. It is really good. I am currently living in Bangkok, Thailand, and serving at Andrew Chapel United Methodist Church. And today it is just a beautiful, sweltering, like 90-something degrees by 8 a.m.
Oh, okay. It is 9 a.m. for you, so I'm
Yes.
actually saying good morning, but it's this is the last thing I'm going to do before retiring for the evening. And you said Andrew's Chapel, that's in Virginia, right?
Yes. So I'm the associate pastor of digital ministry at Andrew Chapel, and we are located in Vienna, Virginia, which is just on the edge of Tyson's Corner, outside of Washington, D.C. And so we're a small, what began as a country church in the 1800s. It has slowly developed into a suburban church, and before too long, maybe more urban than we ever imagined.
Yeah. Yeah, my grandparents lived in Leesburg, Virginia.
Yeah.
And we used to drive through Tyson's Corner, and I always thought, oh, isn't that like a quaint little, cute little Tyson's Corner, quote unquote, kind of way. But
Area, yeah. Yeah, it's neat.
absorbed by the sprawl, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, what inspired you to start Encounter out of this Andrew's Chapel in Tyson's Corner, Virginia?
During the pandemic, the senior pastor, I would come on, I was a ministry intern there at the time, and we were looking, as many small churches at the time were, we were getting into pre-recorded services, and then we moved over to a live stream service. But as we were looking at it, for many people that aren't already connected to your church, the live stream of a small congregation that they don't have any connection to. And so we were really looking at a way of doing a pre-recorded service that would, in many ways, reach out to those that maybe weren't churched at all, whether they had been harmed from the church or left the church, or were really on the go. Maybe they were geographically dislocated. And so Encounter began as a very team approach between our communications director, our pastor, me as associate pastor eventually, and then the senior pastor. And then over time, as we looked at how how far our reach was going, And we began to make sort of adaptations to that. As life would have it, I'm a military spouse, and my family's relocation to Bangkok, Thailand, really shifted Encounter from more of a team approach to where I took the helm of that and brought that ministry with me. And so over time, as we've been at this for a while, I've noticed that the reach is really changing from and adapting from a worship as well as more of a discipleship for those that are already church. So we're kind of looking at a way to walk a little more deeply in our faith through Encounter.
How are you getting an impression of what your reach is?
So as we look on YouTube and we see our numbers aren't, I'm noticing that as we share those videos on YouTube and through social media, I'm finding as a military spouse that has been connected with churches across the country. I've been on staff at churches in California. I've been active in churches in North Carolina and now Virginia. So as I see those demographics show up, I'm recognizing that we're actually reaching a lot of people that are churched and active in congregations. And so this is a way that they are hitting that kind of midweek refresh of a way of they're using this for more discipleship. And at the same time, we're still continuing to kind of keep things at a level where we're trying to kind of remove some of the stained glass language of making it very accessible to those that are unlikely to come in to a church, a traditional brick and mortar church at this time. And so it's keeping it short, keeping it concise, making it easily shareable, or different aspects of that are hopefully as that reach continues to grow. But we're watching it's slow. It's slow, but it's steady.
Yeah. So video production is a central piece of what you're trying to do. And
Absolutely.
now you're kind of away from the church staff, so how are you pulling this together? So I watched some of the videos, and you're doing edits, but also you're like the personality on camera, and obviously there's other people there who are running it. Like, how are you pulling that stuff together?
Oh, I'm a one-man show.
Okay.
um, so as we travel across Asia, I'll take times and kind of record at different places that might be interesting and try to just do just openings and welcomes, whether it be in downtown Bangkok. We were recently in Singapore, so I recorded in various areas of Singapore. So as explore different areas, I've been trying to bring those elements in. And then as far as we offer like a scripture, a meditation, a prayer. And so those things are definitely in a more, contained environment to where the focus can really be on worship and growing. But I do like to allow people to see. I mean, before moving here, had never been to Asia. So seeing some of the day-to-day life has kind of been fun.
Did you have a background in media production? Because as you go through the videos, obviously there's a sense of like narrative story happening here. There's relationship between the different scenes, and obviously the editing aspects that go into that. How did you pull all that together?
Nothing of that sort. I took a lot of the stuff that I learned from seminary, and I thought about what elements that we learned as far as worship and that gathering. And so as I prepare for Encounter, I think a lot about how would I prepare a worship space in person.
Okay.
And so I want, yes, most of these scenes people are invited into my home, basically. Sometimes they may be at the kitchen table. Sometimes they're, but trying to build a space that seems more worshipful. And I also understand that we're also kind of part of the podcast generation where a lot of people that are on the go, they may not be watching the video at all. They may be popping in an AirPod and listening to a message on their morning run. And that is okay. We want to just encourage, however, in your life that you can take time to connect and encounter God, take the time to do that. So we're trying to just make it accessible And so if you can take the time for it to be worship, I want to help support you in that. But if you don't, and it's just more of a chance to recharge, then by all means.
Well, in most of our faith communities, really in our churches and congregations, there's a set rhythm to the way that we kind of gather. Obviously, it's centered around the Sunday morning gathering. Now, Encounter is something different. So, what is really the weekly rhythm of connection look like for Encounter?
So we don't base things on a weekly calendar per se. We produce seasons of Encounter. So
Okay.
if you look, we build 4 episodes around the 4 weeks of Advent. We may do, I did a, Encounter Grace. So it was 4 episodes on grace. So we've looked at different topics, but one of the things that I've noticed over the past over the past year, there aren't a lot of liturgical offerings online, especially if you go to YouTube, that
Mm,
are mainline Protestant. If you're looking for a liturgical expression of faith, you can find them in the Catholic Church, and you can
yeah.
find online offerings that are Catholic. But what I found, especially living out here, where there aren't many English speaking churches in there's one, and it's an interdenominational church. And so if you're missing that liturgical rhythm of it's Ash Wednesday, it's the season of Lent, it's the season of Advent, you can't connect with God in that way. And so when I recognize that we have an entire subset of a community, I mean, there are expats all over the world, but within the military, foreign service, that they're not able to kind of worship in the same way that we have access to in the States. And so this year for Encounter, we've made an effort of bringing the seasons of the liturgical calendar in so that Ash Wednesday was one of our largest viewing days, because I think for many that want to commemorate that, to remember that important day, those opportunities may not be available to them. And so we build these by seasons. And so new episodes drop on Wednesdays on YouTube, and then we kind of promote them on social media and continue on. But they're really always accessible for you to kind of go back and look. So we'll release a few episodes, take a short break, and come back at the
Mm,
next season or with the next sermon series, for instance.
yeah. Are you able to get an idea of how people are discovering the content that you're putting out?
Not really. This is
Yeah.
so new at this point. So we're working on building deeper engagement as far as, encouraging people to comment or, let us know that you're watching and filling out connect cards, leading people to the website. But at this point, a lot of comments and engagement from the other side are not there. And so those are continuing areas that we're continuing to work toward and grow. I think people, I mean, I can tell that they're watching, but
Yeah.
they're definitely not filling out a connect card like they would if they were walking into the service for the first time. So maybe that takes time to develop.
Yeah. Oh, it definitely does. At least I hope so, because so much of what I'm doing too is still in that kind of, well, we're seeing some growth, and hasn't gotten for sure the comments that we hoped to see. And in talking with so many practitioners, it really does take some time to build that up. There's a sense of trust that comes out in just being a presence in those spaces. Has there been some particular videos that just seem to have connected with people more or have garnered more viewership than others?
I noticed Ash Wednesday was huge for us, but I noticed that typically for those that are kind of in that creation process, the beginning of a series, man, you get like a ton of
Hmm.
views and people are so excited. And then by the last one of the series, the numbers are like a fraction of what they started. And so I have found that, if I have something really, really important to say, it needs to be front loaded on that first episode for sure.
Huh.
And so, I mean, yes, I want to continue to keep them coming back, but on a personal note, I think, man, by that that fourth episode of Encounter Grace, and that was the best sermon that I, had in that entire series, and it had,
And
half the
nobody
kids.
knew.
So I learned quickly, like, okay, like you better come out of the gate, really, because
Hmm.
people are excited to try something new or they get busy. So bigger days like Easter. And I'll be interested to see if some of these smaller liturgical days have any impact. Me at this point where we're going to see where they go. But I don't really know how Ascension Sunday is going to go. But we'll
Yeah.
see.
It's a chance for education and enlightenment, right? I mean, in
Exactly.
sharing the story of it.
And there's not any of those resources out there. And so especially for United Methodist, so
Yeah.
what does that lens look like for us specifically?
I think there's a general curiosity about kind of these traditional expressions of that liturgical calendar. So the other podcast I do is meant for what we call a seeker audience. So people who are maybe kind of at the margins of church involvement. And consistently, again and again, the most downloaded episodes we get are those that address ideas around Lent or some of
Yeah.
the, I guess, smaller. It's because people have these questions about, well, what does this mean? And if this has been a tradition for so long, like what kind of ancient meaning can be brought into my life today? And they're curious and it's relevant. It works.
I think so. I think one of the beautiful things about in-person worship is the sacredness of coming into the space and encountering
Mm.
God there. And so what does that look like in the digital space? How are we able to cultivate the sacred? And so, in some of the episodes we've explored, different prayer practices like breath prayer and different expressions of prayer. But I've also found that there's really some power. I've had some of the church members talk to me that are churched about, wow, you brought in a prayer that I hadn't even found in the hymnal. And it was this ancient prayer, and that really meant a
Mm.
lot to me. And so there are ways that we can kind of explore these words that have been part of our faith tradition for a long time. And so introducing that to a new audience is really exciting.
Yeah. Well, and I love this idea that so much of the detraction against digital expressions of church is that it seems like we're trying to blow up everything that had existed before. And yet here we are having this conversation about really kind of leaning into the traditional aspects of how we express our faith narratives, right? It's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people are just looking for something real and authentic. And I'll be honest, if you walk through the doors of Andrew Chapel, you're going to find this beautiful community of people that have been from various backgrounds, various political persuasions, that have been sitting in the same pews next to each other for 40 years, even if they vote the exact opposite way.
Mm.
And they're determined to be in community with one another. And their expressions of worship are pretty traditional. We have, we recite the creeds certain Sundays, and the music, we still have an organ. And so while Encounter, we definitely want to bring that to a digital audience, that we don't necessarily have to throw out everything that we are, because it's not authentic to who Andrew Chapel is. And so what does that look like? Because there's some great contemporary expressions of faith out there, and that may not be what our community is necessarily gifted in the same way. And so
Mm.
just trying to give them a little taste of what this community is. And, if you want to be a part of it from wherever you may be, this is what you get: a community that is diverse and inclusive and seeking God,
Mm.
ultimately.
Well, we've addressed kind of tying to the past. Let's talk about laying into the future. Are there any specific technologies that you lay into quite a bit in the work that you're doing and developing for Encounter, or applications or
Absolutely.
programs? Yeah.
So, one of the best things well, there are two. Finding a good editing software in this day and age is essential. It is well
Mm,
worth putting the investment in. I've been using Final Cut Pro since I've started at the recommendation of somebody else that, at another church, and that has been just so seamless as far as editing videos and things like that. But the thing that I noticed the biggest reach in changing is we've been using an AI generated software to help with reels on social media.
yeah. Okay.
And that has been incredibly helpful because I've noticed that our social engagement on social media has just exploded in comparison to what we were doing before. And so
Mm,
it takes those shorts from the video. So I upload the episode of Encounter when it's ready to publish, and it generates like anywhere from like 6 to 12 options of 30-second reel that you can post with captions. And so
mm,
it saved me hours and hours and hours of time, because this is, you can spend all of this time trying to figure out what is going to make that algorithm
uh-huh.
reach this subset of people. And that's not what we went into ministry for at all.
Mm,
Or at least not why I did. And so I would rather spend those hours working on the message than I would trying to figure out how to. And so anyway, within a matter of minutes, the computer spits this out and we choose, and I'm able to edit the reel to where I want it to be. And then off it goes. And I've noticed that even if people are not watching the entire episode of Encounter, they're catching 30 seconds of something that
mm.
that they're engaging with as they're scrolling through their
Yeah,
phones.
there's something valuable there. Well,
Yeah.
what's the program that you're using? And we're not trying to be an advertisement, but it's helpful for
No,
people to know
no.
who might be. Yeah.
We use Opus.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And so it was just one of the ones that we had come across. I read a couple of reviews and decided to give it a shot, and so far so good.
Yeah. And are you finding that the AI generated clips are actually relevant and make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Good.
And what I loved about it is because it gives you 12 options, nine times out of 10, that their first, hey, this will get the best traction and this is the A+ reel, isn't what I want to
Yeah.
be
Mm,
out there.
mhm.
And so I'm able to go down and continue to go through. And so maybe I find that their fifth option is the best, but then I can edit that on either side of it. But I found that has really brought our or our social media engagement up completely.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
it's
I,
just hits differently.
yeah. I've played a little bit with Opus, and what I do appreciate it about it is that it does give us a sense of justification for why it's recommending.
Yes,
So I've used a few other programs, and it's like working with the lectionary. You're like, well, here's this text, but I don't know like how I'm supposed to make meaning out of this. Like, I know I said it, but
exactly. Yeah, this
but I
was
don't
not
know
where I
why
was
this
going with that.
particular clip, yeah, is going to be relevant for anybody on social media, especially out of context. So yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you definitely have to cultivate. You don't just throw
um,
it on out there. So, but it's been
yeah,
good.
because sometimes, yeah, yep, it's just really kind of out there. Yeah, you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's get to the pastoral care side of it. On your experiences, have there been some key lessons that you've kind of gleaned from lending into pastoral care and leadership in a digital context?
I have been so grateful for avenues like Zoom.
Mm,
There are times that in this digital space, I think, gosh, especially on the church setting where, you can fill your day with administrative meetings, but to have this opportunity to be living so far away from the congregation in which I serve, a completely different effect, because I'm not able to drop by. I'm not able to be at the coffee shop. I'm not able to check in on someone at the hospital. And so I keep an open calendar that is available to my congregation. And then if, you reach out through Encounter, which, there's plenty of ways to access my information through Encounter, but it's really easy for those in our congregation to set up an appointment. And I have a lot of, due to the 12-hour time difference, it's 11 now with the time change, but I
Mm.
have a lot of late night meetings or super early morning meetings that I'm able to still meet and check in on those that I'm connected to. And ironically, the other aspect of pastoral care that I have really leaned into in this space is letter writing. I've spent a lot of time sending out cards that I
Ah.
didn't do when I was seeing them face to face, but to
Mm.
drop in a letter and say, "Hey, I've been praying for you today, and I know this is going on," or I know that, this is, it's been a year since your spouse passed. So those are ways that, in spite of the distance, that you can still let people know that you're there and that you care.
Mm. Do you find that sometimes you're being asked to provide pastoral care to people in the comment section, so to speak?
Not as much with Encounter,
Yeah.
because the engagement hasn't really been in that way. It definitely, I see it some in the community here that I am, here in Thailand. I'm the lone pastor in
Mm.
our area.
Yeah.
There's a local church that is lay run, that is English speaking, but there's not a military chaplain. There's not any. So they'll, I'll be walking the dog and be like, "You're the pastor, aren't you?" And so, where can I get connected? And so I'll tell them about Encounter, or I'll tell them about different things. And so it's really been kind of this unique season of life and a unique season of ministry. But no, I've not had to really dive into the comment section in ways that may come in the future.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, let's future forecast a little bit then. In a year's time, let's start with 1 year and then maybe 3 years out. How would you measure success? So, like, what in a year's time, what do you want to look back at and say, like, oh, this is how we know that we've made an impact?
I would like to see more digital engagement as far as having people actually comment, answering the questions that I offer, "Hey, why don't you drop in the comment section and let me know that
Mm.
this is making an impact here." I would like to see in the fall, one of the goals that I have with Encounter is that we're going to offer a season of Encounter, and with that, offer a synchronous, like, Zoom discussion group with it. And
Cool.
so that so having engagement with that with people from all over would be incredible. So we're trying different ways to continue to build that digital congregation, that digital community, to where, not only are you coming for worship, but that you're also coming for discipleship, that you're coming to grow in your faith. And so alongside of with worship, you're getting the opportunity to meet with another group of people from wherever they may be and discuss the Sermon on the Mount, for instance, and how that impacts our day-to-day life. So that seeing that continue to grow and evolve would just be incredible.
Well, is a logical first place for people to check out Encounter?
So the best place to find us is on YouTube through our YouTube channel, or at our website. You can find us at andrewchapelumc.org/encounter. And all of the episodes are there, linked on our website. You can fill out a connect card, let us know that you're worshiping. You can send prayer requests. Our prayer ministry is on hand to pray. We've had some prayer requests come through. So things like that we can continue to be in relationship with those that would like to encounter God through this way.
Perfect book ending there, Pastor. Well delivered. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Yes, these kinds of stories are so valuable for informing our own practice of digital ministry. So thanks to Reverend Sherry for sharing all of that with us. You can share your own experiences in our Facebook group. It's conveniently called Pastoring in the Digital Parish. If you want to hear more episodes like this one, well, then just check out our last one with Reverend Bethany Peerbolt, if you haven't already, that is. That episode is called From TikTok to Discord. Also, another good episode, Planting a Digital Church. That is from May of 2023. It's a good follow-up to this one just in terms of getting something new off the ground. It's so rewarding for me to be able to have these conversations, I'll tell you. I get to learn with these individuals and help support both their ministries, and I really hope that we get to help support your ministry as well. If there's something I can do for you, if you have some ideas for future episodes that would be helpful, reach out. digitalparish@umcom.org. That's a handy email address to send your suggestions or comments to. We're drawing to a close on season number 8. I think that this is our last episode. So as we start dreaming about a 9th season, I encourage you to drop into the Facebook group, leave your suggestions, or utilize that email to tell us what would be really valuable for you in your own practice of ministry. Thanks so much. Again, my name is Ryan Dunn. Look forward to chatting at you soon. In the meantime, peace.